Welcome back to part two, The Unraveling. Elara believed she had found the key. Intellectual sparring had brought life back to the Duke's dead eyes. She had seen his kindness, glimpsed his sharp, brilliant mind, and started to believe that the monster of the North was nothing more than a carefully crafted lie. But a man's scars run deeper than a few shared debates. As letters from London bring veiled threats and cruel hints of a past betrayal, Valerius retreats, sinking back into the profound emotional distance that defines him. The contract is cold, the castle is quiet, and the only path to the truth seems to lie behind the forbidding door of the West Wing. Chapter 5. Whispers of the Past. The intellectual duel, once a silent game, had evolved into a tense, fragile dance. We no longer just debated through books, we spoke at dinner, our exchanges no less sharp, but filled with a new, charged energy. There was a fragile hope blooming in the cold halls of Blackwood, a sense of an understanding forming between us. He was still distant, still locked away behind an invisible wall, but the wall now felt more like a fortress he was trapped inside, rather than one he had built to keep others out. The outside world, however, had a way of intruding. Letters, once rare and filled with my parents' simple well wishes, now brought snippets of London gossip. They were careful, my mother's letters, filled with vague tidbits and veiled warnings. But the letters from my former acquaintances, particularly one from a social rival, were less subtle. "I hear the Duke is still a recluse," the letter read, the words dripping with mock pity. "A shame to see such a promising man fall so low. We all knew of his temper, of course, but to see him so thoroughly destroyed by that little betrayal, it's rather tragic." The words were a puzzle. What betrayal? Who had he been betrayed by? The rumors of his reputation were one thing, but this was different. It spoke of a specific, personal wound. I tried to bring it up at dinner, a subtle question about old friends, but he shut down immediately. The light in his eyes, the brief spark of life I had glimpsed, was extinguished. He retreated, becoming a ghost once more distant and cold than he had been before our intellectual sparring began. The distance between us grew with each passing day. The books on the library table lay untouched. The silence at dinner was heavy with his new, impenetrable wall. The more he pulled away, the more my curiosity festered. It was more than curiosity now. It was a desperate need to understand, to break through to him again. The rumors I'd read, his sudden retreat, the sheer bone-deep sadness that sometimes flashed in his eyes when he thought no one was looking, it all pointed to something terrible, something that had shattered him and left him hiding in this fortress. And at the heart of it all was the forbidden West Wing. The rule, once a simple boundary, now felt like the key to a locked box. What was he hiding in there? Was it a memento of his betrayal? A symbol of the pain that had driven him to exile? The servant's quiet protection of him, the veiled hints in the letters, it all pointed to the same answer. The West Wing held the truth of his past. And if I was to have any hope of understanding the man behind the mask, of bridging the chasm between us, I would have to break the one rule he had given me. Part 4, the breaking point. The letter came from his former friend, gloating about the betrayal, mocking Valerius for hiding behind his ugly reputation. I was furious. I didn't care about the rules. I stormed to the West Wing, ready to confront the ghost of his past. I threw open the door and found not a monster but a shrine to a lie. Chapter 6, the breaking point. The final, decisive blow came in the form of a letter, not from a London gossip, but from the man himself, his former friend. The seal on the envelope was unfamiliar, but the tone was immediately recognizable, condescending, smug, and filled with a feigned concern that was far more cruel than outright hostility. He wrote of my poor, sad-looking Duke, and how it was a shame that such a brilliant man had broken so completely after their little incident. He gloated about his new life, about his happy marriage to the woman Valerius had loved. He called the Duke a coward for hiding away and mocked his reputation as a monster, claiming it was a convenient lie to avoid facing the truth of his own pathetic ruin. A cold, hard fury, unlike anything I had ever felt, began to build inside me. It wasn't pity for Valerius, it was a fierce, protective rage. He had built this silent fortress around himself, not because he was a monster, but because he was a victim. They had not only betrayed him, but had twisted the knife and left him for dead, and here was the evidence, a gloating victory lap arriving at his very doorstep. The injustice of it all was a physical thing, a fire in my veins. The West Wing was no longer a mystery to be solved. It was a lie to be exposed, a ghost to be faced. I didn't care about the rule. I didn't care about the risk. The polite, distant man at the dinner table was a facade, and I was going to find out what had shattered him. I went straight to the West Wing, a section of the castle that had always felt colder and more dead than the rest. The door was unlocked, a testament to his own belief that no one would dare cross his command. I didn't hesitate. I threw it open, the sound echoing in the silent hall, and stepped inside. What I found was not the lair of a monster. It was a room frozen in a moment of violent grief. Portraits, beautiful and full of light, were slashed across the face, the canvas in ribbons. A delicate chair was splintered, its back broken, as if a man of great strength had shattered it in a fit of despair. The furniture was overturned, the contents of a desk scattered across the floor. In the center of the room, on the cold stone of the fireplace hearth, were 3 words, carved with a furious, deep anger. I was betrayed. The letters were stark, raw, and desperate. The West Wing was not a monument to his ugliness. It was a shrine to his pain. This was not the lair of the monster of the North. It was the scene of a crime, a place where a man had been broken by the people he had trusted most. As I stood amidst the wreckage, a sudden draft swept through the room, and I turned to see him standing in the doorway, his pale eyes holding a devastation so profound it could silence a room. He had found me, not in a moment of rage, but in a moment of absolute vulnerability. Part 5. The confrontation and resolution. The payoff. He found me there, not angry, but shattered, and the whole story spilled out. The woman he loved, the friend he trusted, the rumors they spread to ruin him before he could ruin them. He didn't want a wife, he wanted an ally, someone who wouldn't flinch at the truth. He chose me because at our first meeting, I was the only one who looked him directly in the eye. Chapter 7. The Truth Unveiled. He stood in the doorway, a ghost in his own house of horrors. There was no rage in his expression, only a devastating, bone-deep wariness. He looked at me, standing amidst the shattered portraits and broken furniture, and the last of his carefully constructed walls seemed to crumble. He did not ask what I was doing there. He didn't have to. The truth was laid bare in the ruined room. "You're not afraid," he said, his voice a low, raw sound. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of disbelief. I looked at the scrawled word on the hearth. "No, I'm furious." And then the dam broke. The whole story, the truth that had been buried under layers of rumor and isolation, came spilling out. His voice was no longer the detached, polite monotone I had grown accustomed to. It was filled with a pain that was a decade in the making. He spoke of a woman, a beautiful artist he had loved and intended to marry. He spoke of his closest friend, a man he had trusted without question. They had been conspiring, spreading malicious rumors about him in London, planning to ruin him financially. He had discovered the truth just as they were about to enact their final scheme. "They spread the stories first," he confessed, his eyes, those cold gray eyes, now filled with a desperate, naked vulnerability. The tales of a monster with a vicious temper, of an ugly soul to match my ugly reputation. They knew that if they didn't discredit me first, their own reputations would be in tatters. He hadn't left London out of shame. He had fled to protect himself and his family's honor from further assault. He had retreated to lick his wounds and live as the monster they had created. He admitted to the fear that gnawed at him every day, the fear of being seen for who he truly was and still being rejected, of being seen as weak or pitiful and not being worthy of even a contract. "I didn't want a wife," he said, looking at me with an intensity that made my heart ache. "I wanted an ally, someone who wouldn't flinch at the truth. I chose you, Elara, because when my solicitor introduced us, you were the only person in the room who looked me directly in the eye. Everyone else looked away, expecting a monster. You looked for a man." He was not a monster. He was a man who had been shattered by betrayal and had chosen to hide away in a fortress of his own making, a fortress of cold politeness and absolute silence. But I had seen beyond the walls. I didn't respond with pity. Pity was a weakness. I responded with the only thing a true ally could offer, a promise. "We will not hide anymore," I said, my voice as steady as his, "and we will not let them win. We will go back, and we will make them eat their words." from contract to covenant. The transformation was not instantaneous, but it was profound. The silence at the dinner table was replaced by a new kind of conversation, one filled with shared plans and quiet confidence. We spoke of London, of his former friend's new fortune, and the woman who had helped him steal it. We crafted a plan of slow, meticulous revenge, not with violence or anger, but with the ruthless precision of two people who had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The contract was not forgotten. It was merely the foundation upon which something new was built. I no longer felt caged in this remote castle. I had chosen this bond. I had chosen him, not out of convenience, but out of a fierce loyalty that had been forged in the West Wing. The library became our war room. The drawing room, once a cold and formal space, was now filled with the warmth of our shared debates and quiet laughter. He taught me to ride, and I taught him how to dance, our hands clasping not in a formal waltz, but in a clumsy, happy rhythm in the empty ballroom. The final moment of our old life came on a quiet afternoon. We were in the library, a fire crackling in the hearth, a new silence between us that was no longer empty, but comfortable and full. He had a copy of our original contract in his hand. He looked at me, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. "The terms of our contract," he said, his voice soft, "are officially null and void." He didn't need to explain. The terms, a wife in name, a presence at his estate, no love required, were already obsolete. He placed his hand over mine, not as a signatory to a document, but as a partner in a new, unwritten covenant. "We will create our own terms," he said, and I knew in that moment that our marriage of convenience had transformed into something far more meaningful, a covenant of trust, loyalty, and a love that had bloomed in the most unlikely of places. Thank you so much for listening to the Marriage of Convenience twist. We hope you enjoyed seeing Elara and Valerius move from contract to covenant. If you loved this story of cold contracts, forbidden wings, and a fiercely loyal duchess, please show your support. Like this video, subscribe to the channel for more captivating tales, and let us know in the comments below. What was your favorite moment of Elara and Valerius's journey? We love hearing from you. Until next time, keep listening and keep reading.